everybody, and welcome to Vlogmas Day 11. I don't actually have any vlog footage from yesterday, the 11th, because all we did was watch movies and football all day, made some French toast, and ordered pizza. That was the extent of our Sunday. It was nothing riveting. I promise you did not miss anything. I was on call, but I did not get used. Instead, I decided to do just a flight attendant Q&A. Let's get started. How do you deal with jet lag as a flight attendant? Stay hydrated is really the number one thing, because if you're dehydrated, your body's already going to be tired, and then factor in the different time zones and it just makes it that much worse. So hydration is very important. Also, if I know that I'm going to be flying at odd times or different time zones, then a day or two beforehand I try to adjust my body clock and get to sleep a little bit sooner or later, whichever is going to be applicable. Or when it comes to transatlantic flights, what a lot of crew members will do is once we get to the destination, so for example London or Paris or something like that, once we get there and get to the hotel, we'll sleep for an hour or two and then get up and go explore, because that gives us at least some fuel in the tank to run around the city. For the most part, it's really just trying to get your body clock on that time zone and stay hydrated. Definitely stay hydrated. Another thing that helps with that is to get outside and touch the ground, because that's one way to get your body clock in sync with the clock of where you are. I do get a lot of questions asking for tips to conquer a fear of flying. I have personally never struggled with that myself, so I can't give you any personal experience, but I do know people who have had fears of flying, and what has worked for them and what works for a lot of people is to make sure that you have stuff to keep yourself occupied, so that way you're not thinking about the fact that you are flying. Load up your iPad with movies or games, bring some books or just some music. Don't rely on in-flight entertainment, and don't rely on the Wi-Fi, because sometimes the Wi-Fi could be spotty or you have to pay for it. And in-flight entertainment isn't a guarantee, or even if you know for a fact that you'll have some, it might not actually work. So definitely just bring stuff to try to keep yourself occupied. Or, you know, if it's really bad, you might just have to talk to a doctor and get something that'll help take the anxiety away. I personally don't like to rely on pills, but in extreme cases, you might have to. Something else that would help with the fear, especially if it's turbulence or something happening to the plane, is to learn about the planes. Learn about how well they handle turbulence and how everything works, because then, you know, even if your fears are irrational, you can talk yourself out of it by reassuring yourself, no, this is what happens, this is why it works, this is why it's okay. What is the difference between a lead flight attendant versus a regular flight attendant? The lead flight attendant is just another name for the number one flight attendant, or the A flight attendant, or the purser, or the CSD, which stands for cabin service director. It's just the flight attendant that is kind of in charge of that particular flight or trip. They are the flight attendant that works in first class, or one of the flight attendants that is working in first class. They're the ones that receive all the paperwork for that flight. They also receive an additional pay because it is extra work being the lead flight attendant. No, regular flight attendant is just any other flight attendant that is on that trip in any position. There are other positions. For example, if you are working in a galley on an international flight, then you'll receive extra pay for that because it's extra work. Would you rather work galley or cabin? And have you ever met Betty Nash, the oldest flight attendant in America, for at least? I don't know about worldwide. No, I have not met Betty Nash. I would love to. She is a legend, but no, I have not met her myself. Would I rather work galley or cabin? I like a mix of both, because if I do too much of one thing, I start to get burnt out. So I definitely like to keep it varied as long as I have the option to. I am pretty junior, so it's usually just whatever position nobody else wants. If I had a choice though, I usually pick galley, just because I like to keep busy, and it's easier to keep busy in the galley. There's always something to do. You're always setting up carts for the next service or taking carts down, putting things away, getting things organized. I'm a very organized person, so it's really where that particular trait of mine is able to shine. Yeah, so I would prefer galley, but I do like a variation because I start to get burned out. Do you bid for your positions or are you put in positions? Like I just said, it's just based on seniority. People who are line holders can bid, if they only like working the lead and they don't care what kind of trips they get, then they can bid to just work the A position or the number one position. Their trips might vary though. Or if people don't really care, then they'll just bid for what trips they want to fly, and then once you're on the plane, it's based on seniority. So if I get placed in the B position and somebody senior to me wants that, then they can kick me out and I have to take their position. Not every airline is like this. There are some airlines where the position that you get is the position that you get and that's it. But for my airline in particular, I just am whatever position is left basically because I'm typically the most junior. What would surprise people the most about being a flight attendant? Probably, if you look at the description and just if you're basing it off of just what you see flight attendants doing, then it's a pretty easy job. So I think what would actually surprise people is that it's not actually always that easy. We a lot of times are running on only a few hours of sleep, or that might be our 5th flight for that day. So if we're not the jolliest flight attendants you ever did see, it's probably because we've already interacted with 600 people that day, and that is very taxing on anybody. So I think what would surprise people the most is, how hard it actually can be. In theory, it's a very easy job on a day-to-day basis, not considering emergency situations. In reality, it can be a very hard job, and we don't get treated very nicely most of the time. So it can be a little rough sometimes. Do you have any habits or rituals when flying and staying in hotel rooms? The first thing I do is basically search the entire hotel room just in case there is some weird, scary person hiding somewhere in the room. So I look under the bed, I open up all the doors, I look in all the closets, I look behind the curtains, I look in the shower, I turn all the lights on and search the entire hotel room and make sure that there's nothing or no one hiding in there. I've had a few people ask recently why I'm not just a full-time flight attendant or a line holder. One word, seniority. I am not senior enough to hold a line. Each airline is going to be a little bit different based on their policy and what kind of reserve system they have. Some airlines have a rotating reserve where you'll do 1 month on reserve and then 1 month you'll hold a line, or you only have so many days each month where you're required to be a reserve, but the rest of the days it's any trips that you bid for. So it's seniority. I'm not senior enough to not be a reserve. It also is going to vary, like I said, between airlines, but also just between bases, because some bases are very senior or very junior. So how long it takes to become a line holder is going to vary not only between airline, like I said, but also between bases. What can I as a passenger do to make a flight attendant's job easier or more pleasant? Say hello and goodbye. You'd be surprised the amount of people where we greet them or say goodbye to them, they don't even acknowledge our existence. They just keep walking by. So that would be the first thing, is to just acknowledge us, smile at us, acknowledge us. We are there, we are humans, and we are going to be trying to make your flight as pleasant as possible. So the least you can do is also make our job a little bit more pleasant just by being nice to us. Treats go a long way. Most flight attendants will not turn down a piece of chocolate. So just little treats or just something small. I'm not saying you have to, but you would be surprised at how much it makes our day. Even when a pilot goes and buys us coffee or donuts, it seriously makes our day, because it's just nice to know that there are people thinking about someone other than themselves out there in this world. Just a little $5 bag of those bite-sized candies, those go a very long way in our eyes. I have a lot of questions pertaining to flight attendant interviews and training and all of that, and I do have a video called how to be or how to become a flight attendant. It's a cringe-worthy video though. It was kind of earlier in my YouTube days, and I'm not very proud of that particular video. I didn't explain things very well. I kind of rushed through it. So I do kind of want to do a little series about it, and that'll be either later this month or next month. I'll talk about tips for the interviews as well as training and just kind of your first, couple months being a flight attendant. That will be coming, and I'll get in much more detail. But in the meantime, if you want to go watch that video, go ahead. But I'm promising you, keep your expectations low. Can you explain the differences in serving first, business, and economy class? Which class do you prefer to serve? I like a variety because if I do one thing for so long, then I tend to start to get burnt out, and I like to do something different and something new. And it just keeps the job a little bit more interesting, a little more fun. The differences between serving first, business, and economy is all just in the detail. When you're serving first class, there's a lot of detail. It's a very detail-oriented position, and you're greeting each of the passengers by name. You know where they're going to next if they have a connection. You just treat them kind of like family. First class, I say everything is free, but they paid a lot of money for that ticket, so it's still not like you think they're getting free drinks, but they also paid a lot more for their ticket than you did for yours in main cabin. Business class is kind of the middle ground between first class and economy. The seats are a little bit roomier, the service is a little bit better than main cabin, but it's not going to be as roomy and as nice and as great of a service as first class. Main cabin, economy, coach, it varies between the different airlines. It's people that aren't necessarily frequent flyers, that are maybe just going on vacation or, only fly a couple times a year. There are still business people in main cabin and some of our frequent flyers, and that's just because they just need to get from point A to point B, but first class or business class happen to be full, so they sit in main cabin. The service isn't going to be quite as detailed. That's when we're coming out with the carts. We don't have as much time to spend on each person. Yeah, it's really just about the quality of service. And I'm not saying the main cabin service is going to be low quality. There's just not going to be as much detail. There's not necessarily, you're not going to get a full service meal, and we're not going to be coming around topping up all of your drinks automatically. You might have to ring the call bell for us to come up and refill your drink for you. What is the longest flight you have ever had? Sao Paulo. When I flew to Sao Paulo a few years ago, that was like a 9-hour flight. I can't remember if it was longer on the way down or longer on the way back up, but one of the ways, it was about a 9-hour flight, and that has been my longest flight thus far. Do you guys eat the same meal as the passengers? Yes. Typically, yes, especially on transatlantic, it's going to be the same meals. If it's domestic, no, it's what we get is just in a plastic box, and it's usually some sort of sandwich and a salad, piece of fruit, and like some Oreo cookies or something like that. It's nothing ridiculously fancy or special, so I just always bring my own food because I would rather eat my own food. What do you do to fill your time on those long flights besides sleeping? Well, we're not actually allowed to sleep on those long flights unless it is an authorized break. So on transatlantic, we are required to have a break, in which case we are allowed to sleep if we're on break. If we don't have authorized breaks, we are not allowed to sleep. We will talk or just kind of sit there or read. Yeah, that's it. I make a lot of lists of things that I have to do and whatnot, or kind of plan out the next, month or so of videos. And those are all of the flight attendant question and answers that I have for you today. Again, I'm sorry that I don't have any vlog footage for Vlogmas Day 11, but I hope that this will suffice for y'all and that you still found it to be entertaining and informative. So until tomorrow, or probably later today, depending on when I get Vlogmas Day 12 up, I will see you all later. I love you all. Go make some wonderful memories. Goodbye. We are doing the Santa Bar crawl. We're a little decked out. Keith dyed his mustache white.